Thank you for taking the time to be here today, and welcome to Alternative Fuels and Electric Vehicles 101. My name is Taylor Korn, and I'm a Senior Program Coordinator at Metropolitan Energy Center, and I'm going to be going through the alternative fuels presentation along with some coworkers, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So a bit of background on Metropolitan Energy Center and what we do here. We're a Kansas City area nonprofit, and we've been around since the 80s, so we have over 40 years of experience with energy efficiency. Our department is broken down into two teams. We have our building performance team, and they work on projects like commercial and residential buildings. We have a Project Living Proof demo home in the heart of Kansas City, which shows what a fully sustainable home could look like, and you can learn more about how you could transition your own to that. I'm part of the Sustainable Transportation team, and we are also the designated coalition for the Clean Cities National Network for Kansas City. So we do a lot of work with clean transportation projects and things focused on alternative fuels as a whole. A little more about what we do. We provide resources, outreach, and training so that alternative fuels are no longer alternative and energy efficiency becomes commonplace. So we do this by working with national partnerships and engaging at the local level. We apply for competitive grants through the government and other federal agencies. We do a lot of information training and learning opportunities to help educate our surrounding communities about what's happening in the industry and what they can do to play their part. We also help with problem-solving assistance with fleets. We do technical coaching, work with different municipalities and utilities to help them in their own processes. So these are some recent projects we've worked on over the years where we've helped transition different organizations to cleaner sourced vehicles. On the left, we see some propane school buses we helped Green Valley get. We helped the city of Kansas City install public EV charging stations throughout the city. I believe there's 21 that are available for use. We helped different organizations deploy all-electric yard trucks in Kansas and Missouri. We helped UPS in Nebraska get CNG day cabs. So we've done a lot of different projects in different regions, predominantly in the Midwest, but we focus on alternative fuels as a whole. And these are just a few of the projects we've done recently. So what are alternative fuels? Transportation fuels that can be substituted for gasoline and diesel and are generally cleaner than conventional petroleum fuels. These fuels can be produced from a variety of feedstocks such as food waste, natural gas, and renewable crops and crop residue. Electricity also counts as an alternative fuel, but it depends on how it's generated. And this can be considered a zero emission fuel depending on how it's generated. So most of these fuels can be used in any vehicle class, light, medium, or heavy duty. They're very flexible. So what are the benefits of alternative fuels? Many alt fuels produce a far fewer pollutants like particulates or nitrogen oxides, which are key parts of smog, the stuff that's really bad for our health and breathing, big cause of asthma nationwide. Sources like electricity do not produce any tailpipe emissions whatsoever. Alt fuels can cost less than gasoline, saving money at the pump. And alt fuels are creating numerous new industries, creating brand new job sectors. So what are the disadvantages? Because there always are some. There are higher initial costs than typical gasoline-powered vehicles. Accessibility can be limited. It's hard to get to some of the fueling stations depending on the type of alternative fuel you're actually using. Cleaner doesn't always mean no emissions. There's always impacts. And installation can be tricky and dangerous. Here's an example of an extreme disadvantage. So this is a bleave or blevy, which is a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. And this can happen in different alternative fuels if you do not follow the proper fueling procedures. You got to make sure you're safe when you're using some of these. This is a very rare case, but stuff like that can happen if you're ever looking into getting your own fueling station. So what different types of alternative fuels are there? We have 7 different ones we're going to be focusing on today, and we're going to jump into these individually to learn a bit more about the type and what we can actually use it for. Biodiesel. Biodiesel is a manufactured from vegetable oils, animal fats, or recycled restaurant grease for use in diesel vehicles. Biodiesel is a liquid fuel, often referred to as B100, that is 100% biodiesel, pure or neat biodiesel in its unblended form. And we can see its unblended form right here on the right. The Argonne National Laboratory found that B100 use reduces carbon dioxide emissions by 74% compared to normal gasoline. Nearly all modern diesel engines can burn up to B20 without warranty problems, but B100 takes special equipment and engine modifications. So if you're looking to use this on one of your current diesel vehicles, you're going to have to do some upkeeping with your vehicle to make sure it can actually run biodiesel. Electricity. This is a very common one as of lately that we're seeing all over the country. It can be used to power electric vehicles, and the vehicles charge their batteries by drawing electricity from the grid. All EVs produce zero tailpipe emissions, and hybrids and PHEVs produce zero emissions when using electricity. EVs can reduce fuel costs dramatically because of the high efficiency of electric drive components. 20% of all passenger cars and trucks sold in the US last year were hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or full electric, almost 4 million units in all. Some EVs can power other systems, power tools or a house, and some can sell power back to the grid, which is pretty cool. Ethanol. It's a renewable fuel that's made from corn and other plant materials known as biomass. In the US, it's mostly produced from corn. In Brazil, it's from sugarcane waste. Ethanol is widespread. More than 98% of the gasoline in the US has some ethanol to oxygenate the fuel. All US cars newer than 2001 can use 15%, and flex fuel cars can use up to 85% ethanol. And you'll see this a lot at gas stations. Iowa always uses ethanol at their gas stations. Emissions are reduced on average by 40% with corn-based ethanol compared to gasoline emissions. Reductions can range between 88 to 108% if cellulosic feedstocks are used. Cellulosic ethanol doesn't use corn kernels. Instead, it uses leaves, plant waste, and corn stalks. However, not much is produced domestically since it uses a complex and expensive chemical process. Hydrogen. This is a really cool alternative option, but it is very expensive. Hydrogen-powered fuel cell electric vehicles emit no harmful substances. Your car puts out exhaust, but a fuel cell car produces water. Hydrogen is difficult to store. It requires high pressures, low temperatures, or chemical processes to be stored compactly. Hydrogen is extremely promising as an alternative near zero emissions fuel source, but is currently expensive compared to other fuel types. But I believe ongoing research will help change this. Natural gas. It is an odorless mix of hydrocarbons, mostly methane. Conventional natural gas is a fossil fuel. It can be used as a fuel as compressed gaseous form, CNG, or as a cryogenic liquid, which is LNG. As a fuel, fossil natural gas is cheap, but infrastructure can be pricey. Think about $1 million or more for a fast fueling station, so pretty expensive. According to Argonne National Laboratory, vehicles running on CNG can provide small to moderate GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, by roughly 15% during their life cycle. Propane. This is produced as a byproduct of natural gas production and crude oil refining. So it's kind of comes out of the process of making those fuels that are more commonplace, but it only accounts for 3% of the energy used in the United States. Interest in propane as an alternative transportation fuel stems from its domestic availability, high energy density, clean burning qualities, and relatively low cost. It has an extensive distribution system and is inexpensive. However, it has less energy per gallon than gasoline and diesel, so vehicles using propane require more fuel for the same mileage. Propane vehicles produce lower amounts of harmful air pollutants compared to conventional diesel and gasoline-powered vehicles. And finally, renewable diesel. This is a fuel that's made from fats, oils, soybean oil, grease, and it is chemically identical to petroleum diesel and can be used in any diesel car or truck. It's not produced through a chemical process, but renewable diesel uses the same refining systems as conventional gasoline and diesel with intense heat, pressure, and catalyst to actually create the fuel. The past few years have seen tremendous growth in new plants for renewable diesel production in the United States, with most of it being based in California. A study by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory found that renewable diesel reduced both carbon dioxide and nitrogen oxide emissions, reducing carbon intensity by 65% compared to petroleum diesel. So all of these fuels have their different uses, the way they're produced, they're all a little different, and they all have different implications and effects in the real world. So I want to be clear that one size doesn't fit all. We can't just jump into using these outfuels and put them in, any vehicle we're wanting to use. They're versatile, but they do not fit every need. Some are better used for specific vehicle applications, like propane is becoming really popular with school buses because it's more efficient. It's not going to produce as much emissions, and propane also cuts the noise in school buses, which is beneficial for the drivers. We've seen a lot of natural gas being used in public transit buses lately, specifically here in Kansas City. Most of our public transportation buses run on CNG now. We've seen electricity all over the streets, especially the past few years. It's been making quite a few headlines, to say the least. We have a bunch of automotive makers that are starting to move in this direction, and right now it's very widespread and available for light duty vehicles, with medium and heavier vehicles still trying to figure out cheaper ways to manufacture that technology. Hydrogen, again, another expensive option and not very accessible or available for that matter, but with research and more time, I believe it can be a very legitimate option and choice as an alternative fuel source. Biodiesel can be used as a replacement for a lot of normal diesel vehicles and is able to be transitioned to a lot of heavier duty vehicles. So jumping back to kind of the disparity and availability of some of the different fuel types. So electric vehicles are widespread and there's charging stations all over the place. We can see the screenshot from the alternative fuels AFDC, and we can see how available charging stations are throughout the United States. They're everywhere, and there's only going to be more coming within the next few years. On the right-hand side, we can see the availability of propane and hydrogen. Yes, sorry, hydrogen. And there's not much. Like I said earlier, it's pretty much just California that's even able to use the technology so far. It's too expensive for the time being, but eventually it may start to look a little closer to the EV screenshot. Who knows? But these screenshots were taken from the Alternative Fuels Data Center, and this is a great resource if you want to learn more about the different types of fuel we talked about today, what vehicles they can be used for, their benefits, their disadvantages, how they affect the environment. This is a great portal for just staying up to date with what's going on in the alternative fuel space. The Climate Program portal is a great way to find ongoing projects within the nation and even funding opportunities if you're looking to actually implement some of these alternative fuels. So before we conclude, I would like to go through our Clean Cities program, which is what we are part of here at Metropolitan Energy Center. We're the Kansas City Regional Clean Cities Coalition. And the premise of this whole nationwide network is to advance the energy, economic, and environmental security of the United States by supporting local decisions to reduce petroleum use and transportation. So overall, we're trying to knock down transportation emissions and make cleaner air for everyone. It was created in 1993 out of the Energy Policy Act of 1992, and it's currently run by the Department of Energy's Vehicle Technologies Office. There's nearly 75 designated coalitions nationwide, including us here in Kansas City, and we provide a framework for business and government agencies to work together. Since 1993, Clean Cities coalitions have offset more than 10 billion gallons of petroleum, which is pretty awesome. And we've been able to replace them with a lot of the alternative fuel options that I just discussed in the previous slides. So here's a map showcasing all the coalitions around the nation so far. Here we are in Kansas City. We're helping our greater Kansas Clean Cities chapter get set up, and that will be smack dab in the middle of Kansas pretty soon, which is very exciting. But these are always growing and will continue to do so as we move forward. So a little bit about what we're working on now related to alternative fuels. We currently have an open request for applications for replacing diesel vehicles with EVs and alternative fuel vehicles. This is a really exciting opportunity for organizations to be able to get some dollars to help actually move towards some cleaner sourced vehicles. Connecting with our partners beyond the Kansas City Metro throughout Kansas and Missouri, we're trying to have more of an emphasis on working with more rural communities within our region. We're also trying to advocate for public transit development in these urban and rural regions. And a project we're working on is also helping stand up 3 new designated Clean Cities coalitions in Lincoln, Springfield, and Wichita to offer statewide services in all their respective states. If you're interested in learning about any more of these, please don't hesitate to contact us. Our information is going to be at the end of this slideshow. But to finish it off, I am going to pass things over to Drew Ahrens, who is also part of the MEC team, and let him talk a little bit more about public transit. So Drew, if you want to go ahead and jump in, feel free.
All right, thank you, Taylor. Hi, everyone. Drew Ahrens here. Like Taylor said, a program coordinator here at MEC and a representative of Kansas City Regional Clean Cities. Just wanted to take a few more moments of your guys' time today for the MEC portion of the presentation to talk to you all about public transit and the work we're doing in this space. So as you all may be aware, public transit is kind of the ultimate form of sustainable transportation. It decreases emissions, it gets the most amount of people in the least amount of space, and it helps our roads not be damaged. And there's just a million benefits when it comes to public transit. And so while MEC does have a history with public transit, you may look in the right-hand corner here, there's an old newspaper article, and we're quoted as saying how beneficial public transit is for our roads. It hasn't always been the focus at MEC. We've really been working on more single-use vehicles and the alternative fuels that go along with that. But within the past few years, we have begun to foray our way into the field. And as you can see on this slide as well, we've helped school districts access school buses, which is a great form of public transit. And we've also helped the KCI airport contract new electric shuttle buses, which is a great way of public transit getting from the parking lot to your flight. So lots of great ways that we've helped with public transit in recent years, but we're wanting to do more. And so with that being said, Taylor, if you can hit the next slide. There are many other ways that we want to interact with public transit development in the next few years. First and foremost is by empowering financial support for public transit, and that's going to be via widespread outreach throughout Kansas and Missouri. Like Taylor said, we have ongoing projects that aim to reach out to places beyond the Kansas City Metro and beyond the Wichita area. And so we really want to connect people to the financial support that public transit can bring, not only to big cities, but to smaller communities as well. And so that can take place through a variety of ways, whether that's private foundational funding, whether that's working with your city councils and city organizations to get it at a local level, whether it's at a regional level with county commissioners, or whether it's even at a state level with state legislators. It's an ongoing process that we're trying to figure out, but all in all, we're just trying to figure out how we can interact with people and advocate for public transit in an equitable way. And so in doing so, we're hoping to improve existing public transit infrastructure, but also helping to support new public transit infrastructure. It's important to keep in mind that public transit isn't just buses. In small communities, it's paratransit. It's vans that take people from um, point A to point B to the grocery stores, to help, to education, to healthcare visits, and all those good things. So it also could look like a much more expansive service, like paratransit light rail and passenger rail development. And it can also be even the smaller forms of multimodal transportation, like bicycling and e-scooters. So we're really interested in interacting with communities and seeing what they need, kind of meeting them where they're at. And that will tie into listening sessions that we hope to host with communities and to hear what they want out of public transit. Lastly, we're thinking maybe if cities or any organizations are interested, we're partnering with them to conduct studies for new bus routes and new public transit opportunities, and publishing reports summarizing those studies. And finally, actively engaging with ongoing public transit advocacy efforts. We've really been working with a lot of different partners in the Kansas City Metro specifically, but throughout Kansas and Missouri, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to partner with people who are already working actively in this field. And so, yeah, if any of these things interest you, I'm the lead for this on our transportation team, so feel free to contact me, drew.aarons@metroenergy.org. I believe my contact information is on the next slide, along with Taylor and David's. But yeah, with that being said, that kind of wraps up MEC's portion of today's presentation. Before we move on to Julie Dietrich and Evergy's portion, we wanted to open the floor for questions. So if y'all have any questions, feel free to drop them in the question box or the question chat, and we'll get around to answering them to the best that we can.
So Myron Linewater just asked if we work with MPOs or other organizations, and we do work with different organizations depending on the project. They can be municipalities. We've worked with the city of Kansas City on quite a few. We've worked with Lawrence a few times as well on different projects and programs that we work on. As far as metropolitan planning organizations go, the MPOs, we haven't exactly been working with any too closely, but that goes hand in hand with Drew's push for public transit and trying to focus more on that. So we dabble here and
And
there.
just to add on to that, Taylor, while we don't have active partnerships with the Kansas City Metropolitan Planning Organization, Mark, Mid-America Regional Council, we are a part of their committees and are looking to partner with them at any given time, as well as our partners in Greater Kansas with WAMPO, Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. If Jenna were here today, she's our lead coordinator at Greater Kansas. I think she could speak about it more eloquently, but I know she attends some of those meetings as well and tries to keep abreast of all the updates that their local MPO works on.
So Nikila just asked a good question about how does current political changes or proposals impact clean cities or alternative fuel vehicles? So there's a lot going on at the federal level right now, a lot of changes happening that may not be in our best interests in terms of moving forward with our push for sustainability nationwide. We have already at MEC experienced a few setbacks in terms of projects being temporarily shut down based on the purpose of them. Anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or the Justice 40 program was put on pause. Federal funding was stopped for those respective programs. So there's certain aspects of the work we do that has already been impacted significantly by political changes as of lately. Some of the proposed auto tariffs could affect the prices of some of these alternative fuel vehicles and make them even less accessible for organizations, for consumers. So a lot of what's going on is going to have a direct impact on alternative fuels and clean cities, but that doesn't mean everything's coming to a halt. There's still a lot of hope and a lot of ongoing work that is being done to continue pushing towards a more sustainable future. So I think although we find ourselves in a harder time. It just is more of a reason to continue pushing forward. But thank you for that question, Nikhil. Eleanor asked, which alternative fuel besides electricity are organizations you work with the most interested in? It's another good question. I think it varies depending on the types of vehicles that respective organization works with. For example, if it's a larger fleet, like a city fleet that's working with larger scale vehicles, they're probably going to be leaning towards CNG as an option. That's been very reliable in the past few decades, and most cities feel comfortable using it compared to some of the other alternative sources that are available. There's just maybe not enough experience yet, and people don't like to be guinea pigs, which makes sense. But yeah, electricity is probably the biggest one, and CNG. And I mean, we worked with Grand Valley, who's working with propane in their school buses. So again, I think it depends on the organization and what their focus is and what vehicles they operate. But thank you for the question. Okay, I'm gonna start transitioning us to Julie Dietrich at Evergy and her electric vehicle 101 presentation. So thank you all for being here. I'm gonna switch it over to Julie's end.
I'm Julie. I'm here to talk about electric vehicles just at a very basic level because we just didn't know, with a different interest level or education level as far as to this topic. So we're going to keep it pretty basic, but I have my contact information here. So after today's presentation, if you're left with wanting more, here is my contact information. I welcome you to just reach out to me. I love talking about this. I'm very passionate about what I do here at Evergy. So my name is Julie Dietrich. I manage our fleet electrification program at Evergy. And really what that means is I work with customers like you see here, Amazon, school districts, transit agencies. When they decide to electrify their vehicles, they have a need for electric infrastructure for the charging equipment. And so that's what I do. I step in and I help kind of run down information and help with work orders for this new type of work we're doing to support electric transportation. We have an online resource. It's called thecleanchargenetwork.com. And a lot of this content I stole right from it. So if later down the line, if you want to visit this site and access some of the content that we are talking about today, it is there for you. As you can see, we try to tailor our messaging to where you're at in your journey with electric vehicles. If you're just getting started, we have a wealth of information. We also even have information to connect you to the right electric vehicle. Or if you're already an electric vehicle driver and you need more assistance with finding charging or installing charging equipment in your home, there's help there as well. I'm gonna move on. So really what I find with electric vehicle journey, it's really hard to get started. And as with anything, making a major change, it's a huge commitment. I am of an age where we didn't always have a cell phone in hand. Our phone maybe was attached to a wall. And just even making that change, even though it was a positive change, more convenient, it wasn't always the best experience, in the early days. I remember you might even see if, like in old pictures, very large bag batteries with cell phones. And it really took people that were committed to wanting to learn and experience new technology to really try these things out first. And now everybody has cell phones, and it's really hard to imagine your day without it. And, in my early days of carrying a cell phone, I would find I would run out of batteries all the time, whereas today I don't even have to think about it. So when you commit to making that change, even though you're fueling up differently, it does become easier to fill up. Electric cars can charge while you sleep, like we often do with our cell phone, and you realize when you're not using the vehicle, and you realize when you are using the vehicle and how often, and you really do adapt and really wake up. I charge at home. I wake up with a full tank of gas, full battery every single day, and I don't have to interrupt my life to stop and fuel elsewhere. You fuel while you sleep, you can fuel if you know you're taking a shopping break, and the not stopping at gas stations, is an added perk for sure. I'm not going to sit too long on this. We already know electric cars are better for the environment. Electric cars, energy sources keep getting cleaner. And what that means, if we're coaching our customers that adopt these electric vehicles to charge during off-peak times and often in the middle of the night. And if you look at a utilities generation mix, during that time of day, you're often going to see, like, especially for us, like wind. So, it really does depend when and where you charge, but electric cars, energy sources are getting cleaner. They do not have tailpipe emissions, and it just means we all can breathe a little bit easier. Electric cars are cost less to own. This is something that I have to have a lot of conversations around, because if you are considering like having to install charging equipment, say at your home, or if you're a fleet, on your premise, that year one cost of owning an electric vehicle is going to be more. So we really have to take those conversations to thinking about the lifetime of the vehicle. And when you do consider the lifetime of the vehicle, how much fuel you would ever use for that vehicle over its lifetime, the cost to maintain the vehicle, that's going to keep your return on investment in an area that you would like it to be. Big tax incentives, we have this now, it may go away, but there is becoming more and more cost parity even without those big tax incentives that we're seeing. So again, just especially if some of the changes at the federal level do impact, what incentives may be available for us in the future, it really is helpful to just understand what is the total cost of ownership over the lifetime of the vehicle when you're evaluating if this is a decision that's right for you. There is becoming more and more electric vehicles available for all, for every lifestyle or budget. They're in a variety of sizes, capabilities, ranges, and they're becoming more affordable. So they're not just for the wealthy. Maybe 10 years ago, for those that were trying it out, you are going to pay a lot more. But the cost has come down, the range has gone up, and the number of types of vehicles. We love our SUVs in the Midwest, and you're going to see more and more variety and better performance even out of larger vehicles become more and more available. And electric cars have really cool technical features that you would have never expected before. Many cars can be driven with one pedal. I have an electric vehicle, and then my husband has a gas vehicle, and I can very seamlessly go back and forth between the two types of vehicles. But I have found that both of us, if both cars are available and not in use, we're going to gravitate to the electric vehicle. They're just easy to drive, and you can do fun things like preheat them from your cell phone without worrying about taking it outside, because there's no emissions coming out of that vehicle, and you can heat it up or cool it down anywhere. My 75-year-old father just bought an electric vehicle, and it has a feature that it drives itself when on cruise control on the highway, and he's just tickled about it. So if a 75-year-old can adapt to these new features and technologies, you know, it really says a lot to these car manufacturers, making these just really easy to drive and bringing features to us that we could all benefit from. Electric cars are quiet, smooth, and powerful. That was probably one of the first things I noticed when I, test drove a vehicle. It was almost scary, to be quite honest, because when you drive a car, electric car, like you would drive a gas powered car, you're going to take off a little bit. The torque is pretty impactful, but once you adapt to it, you just find it super responsive and, you know, and again, just smooth and fun to drive. Another thing you will quickly notice too is that they're super quiet, and you have to be really careful when you're coming up on people. It's great that you're not emitting emissions into the air and, you know, as they're walking by, but they can't hear you. And a lot of cars actually do add sound, a fun sound, so that they can be heard, a pleasant sound, so that they can be heard. So I just challenge you, give an electric vehicle spin if you haven't done it already, and you're going to find, you know, some of these things to ring true. Electric vehicles do benefit society as a whole. One really great use case for this is, you know, I've helped, you know, several school districts I'm part of their journey when they are electrifying to school buses. And, you know, emissions, they can go inside the vehicle, you know, for those that are inside riding in the vehicle. One fun thing I noticed is standing in the car line when kids are and teachers are, you know, trying to get kids boarded onto the bus. Those buses are sitting there and they're idle. And, you know, if there's a couple of electric buses in that car line, you'll see that everybody's congregating by the electric buses just naturally because they're quieter. They, you know, they're not emitting the smell or the gas. And, you know, it's just a really good benefit. It's also reduces the noise pollution. They're better for the power grid. And they're also, you know, electric prices, you know, it's not to say that electricity prices are set in stone and they never go up or fluctuate, but, you know, we're talking once every year or two or three that there might be a change in an electric price of an electricity versus daily that sometimes you can see with gas. So you might, you know, wonder charging an electric car, you know, where are you going to do it? A lot of people do it at home. If you do live in a multifamily dwelling, that is another conversation to have, and maybe just another consideration you will have to make is just to understand where is that charging going to happen. You can charge a car with the same outlet that you would plug an electric hairdryer in. You can charge with a 120 volt outlet at home. You're also going to see potentially at home or out in public, we call it a 240 volt outlet as well. The reason why some may choose to upgrade to a 240 outlet, and that is the same type of outlet that you would see with an electric clothes dryer or an electric oven. So those are residential grade outlets, and what they will do is allow you to charge the car a little quicker. It helps you take advantage of rates that may be available during certain times of the day, and I will get into that. So a lot of questions that I get when I'm out talking to customers, how much is it going to cost to fill a car? Well, different cars have different battery sizes. So the cost to fill something from 0 to 100% charge is going to vary based on the size of the battery. So what we like to do is maybe talk about a typical average daily range that someone might drive in a day, which 40 miles of range. That's the average commute. So if you say you have not installed anything special at home, you just have a regular power outlet, level 1, what you would use for a hairdryer, and if you wanted to replace 40 miles that you drove in that day, it would take you 8 hours approximately. If you do upgrade to level 2 or use a level 2 charger out in public, that same 40 miles could take about an hour, hour and a half. Even the level 2 chargers have different levels of power, so that's why I'm talking in generalities. But this tells you what would be the difference between level 1 or level 2. If I do typically drive 40 miles a day, the car is going to be parked 8 hours a day, you could get by without level 1 charging, no problem. Then you may ask yourself, then what would that cost? What would the cost be for to replace those 40 miles? The residential rate in Kansas, so this is, it is going to vary based on the rate of electricity that you pay. So we grabbed one of our service territories. $1.06 if you're on a normal rate, not a special rate for your house. If you do sign up for a time of use rate and charge overnight, midnight to 6 a.m., that cost would be 41 cents. It's very affordable. That's what makes the total cost of ownership of operating an electric vehicle over its lifetime very competitive. So level 2 chargers, they're AC charging. It's the best choice for routine charging. It adds about 25 miles of range per hour. It's a good choice for any time that you'll be parked an hour or more. For public, and you're traveling from a very long distance, you're going to use something a little bit more powerful than it's called a DC or direct current fast charger. It's also called level 3. It can add range to your car faster, up to 160 miles of range per hour. It's a great option for when you're short on time or traveling the long distance. And that 160 mile per hour is pretty conservative. Again, these fast chargers come in different sizes. The bigger the fast charger, the faster it's going to charge. Again, for public, just comparing that 40 miles of range now from a level 2 to the fast charging just shows you how much faster. It also shows you the cost change. You're going to pay a little bit more for that speed, and you're going to pay a little bit more to charge publicly. But still very competitive if you're comparing this to price, per gallon of gas. If you have a 40 miles per hour, miles per gallon range for gas. So I've just talked up to this point about passenger vehicles. Passenger vehicles can be utilized for personal use like anybody on this call would use. Passenger vehicles are often also used for fleets. Pickup trucks and small sedans make up, a number of fleets, as well as those larger vehicles as well. So if you are wanting help evaluating kind of that return on investment for your larger vehicles, like vans, like Amazon vans or school buses or even large transit buses, Evergy also does have a tool that you can use for free at www.evergy.com/fleets. It is going to ask you for your email. That just tells me who's using it. I don't use it for any other purpose, but if there's a company out there that I know that I would like to connect with because I've heard that they're going to start buying electric vehicles, it's just important for me to connect with those individuals and make sure I help them with charging infrastructure. But really, this tool is open for anybody to use, and you can compare one to 100 vehicles. If you want to look at the ROI, it's going to walk you through a series of questions, and it will ask you when and how long you're going to be charging it, and it'll give you kind of what that payoff will be, factoring in things like incentives and fuel cost savings. It's all built into the tool. And this is, I've concluded my presentation content, but I once again wanted to put my contact information out here in the event that there's a project that you're working on, or if you just are curious and have a question that you would like to ask, feel free to shoot those my way. I'm happy to connect over email or set up a quick phone call and answer any questions that you have. But with that, I think we've allotted some time today if there's any questions that you have for me right now.
Eleanor asked, does Evergy offer any incentives for businesses or organizations wanting to install EV chargers?
It's a great question. Yes. Evergy does offer up to $500 for those installing charging at their home. And then, depending on the size of charger, if you're going with the, let's see here. This level 2 charger that charges at 25 miles per hour, we have an incentive of $2,500 per charger. And then for the fast chargers for our fleets, we offer up to $20,000 per charger. I invite you to reach out to me and I can give you all of the specifics around those if you are planning for charging at home or if you're planning for fleet charging, and I can get you those incentives information. It's also available for residential. It's available on this cleanchargenetwork.com website if you are looking for personal vehicle incentives.
Our contact information was available here. If anyone has any follow-up questions that you think of after the fact or browsing through the materials makes you think of something else, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. But thank you all so much for joining our session today and learning more about alternative and electric fuels.